Welcome to SwitchCorner, my name is Alex, and today we're going to be taking a look at Never Alone Arctic Collection on the Nintendo Switch, a puzzle platformer developed in collaboration with the Iñupiat and Alaska Native people. But is it worth your time, and how does this traditional story translate to the gaming landscape? Well, hit subscribe, join us here on SwitchCorner for reviews and deals weekly, and let's get started. Story then, and as I mentioned, this was developed directly in collaboration with the Iñupiat people. It instantly brings more weight and credibility to the story, and there's a particularly poignant opening line, "We are more than a museum piece," which for sure was impactful. This tale, it's relatively straightforward. An eternal blizzard rages. It threatens the survival of everything you have ever known. And you, Nuna and Fox, you set out to understand the cause and how to put it to an end. I enjoyed it though. Throughout it adds context, and I particularly enjoyed the kind of inclusion of videos. There's 24 videos in total though for the main game to find, and these kind of act as both a development diary for the game, but also explanation of this culture from elders to members to storytellers. This also then contains the Foxtales separate DLC that is from the main quest, and it packs another 5 videos. Foxtales, it's a prologue of sorts that tackles an open ocean and sailing theme. So gameplay, and it's a puzzle platformer. Where it's immediately unique though is that you'll be controlling both of our characters, that's Nuna and Fox. To do this in single player, tap X to quickly shift between them, or play 2-player in local co-op. Both characters though will be essential though with different skills. Nuna, for example, has a bit more flexibility in exploration. She has the ability to grab at ledges or even pull objects, while Fox, more nimble, able to fit through smaller gaps, and has the ability to control spirits around this world. They will basically appear and move in your presence. It's never a particularly difficult game honestly, but it is enjoyable as puzzle platformers go, with a combination, I think, obstacles to overcome, and then the use of weather as well, that being the wind in this world. For long jumps, for example, use this to propel yourself, or even simply duck not to lose your footing. As you do progress, then it embraces the more mystical side of the story, and that to me is where it absolutely succeeds. Trees that move, creatures, even as I said, the already mentioned spirits. The opening moments, we kind of encounter a polar bear attack. I thought it would be difficult to overcome this, and I was wrong. There's a Northern Lights sequence, for example, that was particularly impressive. Nuna will also then have access to what's called the bowler, think almost a slingshot, that will clear paths and interact with this world. On that note, actually, the bowler, it works for me, but the system, pull away on the right stick, then push it forward to kind of fire, it definitely lacks some accuracy, and it was particularly frustrating in the few minor chase sequences that require what I'd call immediate input. Not a big problem, but more just a kind of warning. The Foxtales DLC then introduces some new mechanics as well. The bowler is actually gone and replaced with the ability to sail and pick objects up. I actually think this was much more enjoyable. A good portion of this though is based around water levels, so do expect a whole lot of swimming here. Fortunately though, not of the painful variety. The controls are handled well, and for me in these kind of 2.5D adventures, swimming can kind of be hit and miss. One thing that did surprise me outside of maybe the occasional issue, the AI controlled companions for the most part in single player, they do a good job of keeping themselves alive. Not once would I say a death to a character was anyone's fault but my own. I did have a weird issue a couple of times in what I would kind of call, I guess, 2 boss moments. I would spawn, instantly fall to my death. Again though, that was easy enough to correct after I kind of recognized what was happening. Finally, the environments, I love them, from the ice caps to destroyed villages to underwater moments to the more mystical forest locations. It kept on changing while keeping it feeling thematically consistent. I always looked forward to the next location, and it definitely escalates at this great speed. Death then is mainly reserved to falling into pits or off ledges, and it is instant, but again, it never felt unfair. Other problems towards the end game, the platforming can be pretty demanding. Time your jumps just right, with the wind pushing behind you, land on maybe a small platform. And while I don't mind the controls in these moments, they definitely felt a little bit clunky. They're not the most responsive. Overall as well, it's just relatively slow movement speed and animation, so it didn't quite feel right. Once I got over them though, I could appreciate what they was going for in these moments, but perhaps a bit of fine tuning it would have went a long way. Then the frame rate, it's not bad at all, but as the scenery and the action gets bigger in the latter half of the game, so did the appearance of frame rate drops. It's far from frequent, maybe a few occasions, but I wanted to call it out today just so you go in aware. I won't be showing it in the video either, as it is in what I would call, or at least what I would consider, spoiler territory. For some then, finally, the runtime, it may be a little bit short. I'd say 2.5 hours for that base game, 1 for the DLC, but mixing the video footage, you're going to be hitting right around 4.5 hours. I think it's the perfect length for the stories it is telling, but I know for some that can be a big factor in picking up a game. Overall for gameplay though, sure, look, there's a few issues. The instant death on buses loading in, frame rate drops, and the controls not quite keeping up to the ask, but for me, everything else outweighed it. A unique location, story, and just the fact they went above and beyond with the video files, they had me intrigued, and it led to me having more care for my character than probably most games in the genre. Graphically then, I really liked the style they went for. It's naturally a very icy theme, but given that, the game could have been a whole host of, white and grey. But what they actually do here is they play with the theme thanks to things like fire, locations, and just generally different textures. They also then use lens effects that close in often around our characters, and that really does a nice job of reflecting the isolation of this location, but also then the landscape. While there is minimal characters and the animations are solid, and I particularly enjoyed the polar bear chase that we see on a few occasions, and then we get even more mystical. They capture this flowing nature to these, creatures' navigation. It's also then extremely easy to identify what can and can't be interacted with, which is always kind of a worry when we are working with a 2D styled world, at least in movements. Issues, not a huge amount occasionally. Characters can get a little bit glitchy as they lock onto the world, maybe even get trapped in a loop, especially for your AI counterparts, but they tend to resolve themselves quickly, and the moments they were definitely few and far between. Finally then, the video files, naturally these are for the most part real video, but the quality and the overall production extremely high. Audio to close us out then, and good stuff. Well, there's not a huge amount from our characters. I think they did a decent job filling this world with some sound effects to kind of reflect, what is happening, but then also blending it all together thanks to wind effects, a prominent audio and gameplay mechanic. It's definitely intimidating though, you can definitely feel the weight of it. The music then is good quality though, it's often more ambience over anything else, and then the voiceover does a really good job of conveying emotion, even if it's in a language many of us won't understand. That's a good thing though, it drives the authenticity of the experience. So the final verdicts and good stuff, I really enjoyed my time with this one, and while I do think just the core experience, not the longest, I think it's actually the perfect runtime, and then you do get that extra 60 or so minutes of DLC to enjoy too. Now, does it have problems? Sure, the controls not quite up to the task of the game's demands by the end, and then a few glitches here and there, but I do think it's still unique. I think it looks great on the Switch, and the combination of gameplay with video, I really enjoyed it, and I would happily sit here and watch all of those videos again. It's a seriously, as I said, high production quality. It's a good 7 out of 10 from me today then, and at the time of recording we do have a sequel now in the works. It was just announced, something I'm extremely excited to see. Will you be adding this one to the library then, or are you holding onto that cash? A shout out then to the patrons of the channel who are going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. It helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. Then hit subscribe if you love the Switch, as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.